What's up, my healthy friends? I'm glad you've got me sitting here nestled in your ears, ready for another 40 minutes of whispering sweet nothings about changing your life. How fantastically romantic. Better still is that in 2023, it's my mission to coach 500 people to stop the binge eating and savage self-talk cycle so they can lose weight whilst feeling in control and without restriction along the way. And if any of that resonates and you want to have a chat, then scroll down to the show notes below, click the link and start a conversation with yours truly. Now, today's guest is coming back for the second time. He was first on episode 166, talking about how to get kids off screens to break what is now a legitimate diagnosable condition, would you believe? I'm talking about screen addiction. And we've got my man, Gary Borham, here with us today to continue that conversation in a bit of a different way. And just before we get into it, a bit about Gary. So he's a father of two, a tech entrepreneur, and has 15 years of experience as a global behavior change expert for adults in order to level up their output and performance. And with all the distractions and all the little addictions that we've got from screens and food and all that different type of stuff, there's never really been a greater need to change your behavior in the context of screens and technology. And well, that's likely why you listen to the show, to change the way you do stuff, right? So Gary is also the co-founder of HitPauze, his second successful startup following My Screen Coach, which we went deep on episode 166. So after you finished here, go and check that out, especially if you have kids. So the idea of HitPauze is that it functions as an out-of-office style responder for messaging and social media platforms. It's designed to boost productivity and improve mental health by reducing phone-related anxiety and setting clear, solid boundaries with phone use, unplugging you from the all-consuming matrix of social media. And we're going to get into that right now. So Gary, my friend, welcome back to the show. How you been?
Yeah, hey, Matty, good to see you again. Yeah, I'm well, mate, well.
I'm glad to have you back because I tell you what, as we were sort of talking about this before we hit record, you know, it just feels like the reach of social media and screens just gets bigger and deeper and the rabbit holes get darker. And so I'm so curious to know, why are you so passionate about this world of getting us off this technology?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, for me, I think that, there's this concept that if we're active in our minds, we're effective. Mm-hmm. And the question I have is that, I suppose, the monkey mind we talk about in Buddhism, or the that thing that never keeps stopping talking, that's something you talked about in your intro, is that the effective piece? Or is sometimes when you pull away from that and you actually just listen to the truth, listen to something that's deep inside, I find that's when we're really effective. And that's where my real mission comes from, is getting us the ability to, because these things are so compelling, they're so addictive, they're so fun. I'm guilty as charged, but I just know that sometimes when we put that down and give ourselves that moment, gee, we're effective, gee, we're powerful, gee, we actually get some real messages that lead us in the right direction. That's my passion.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're always talking about finding the zone. What many people talk about is being in the zone. Yep. And I feel like it's been a long time for many people that it's very rare that they feel like they're in the zone of productivity or focus because, there is so many bells and whistles on their desktop or their phone, and you actually find yourself in the zone so much less frequently than we used to.
It's funny you mentioned the word. I was actually, just before we got on the call, I picked up a couple of my favourites, Deep Work by Cal Newport and Stolen Focus by Johan Hari. And, when you start reading some of the material about this, is the fact that as effective as tools can be for our productivity, we just lose the ability to really do that deep work. Sometimes just answering one thing after the next, there's this burnout that occurs over time. But, sometimes when you get 2 or 3 messages and you're on top of it and you're in flow, we can talk about that as well a little bit, but when you're in that flow, it's great. But then eventually it starts to catch up with you. Eventually, by the end of the day, maybe the end of the afternoon, end of the week, end of the quarter, end of the financial year, you just start to get a little bit wound down. And sometimes I feel that's a real piece for us to really focus on.
Just as you mentioned that, it made me think of I think it was I went to a Kerwin Ray event maybe, and for those that don't know Kerwin Ray, he's a successful Australian entrepreneur that runs all sorts of different things regarding social media and how to leverage it to make millions of dollars. Yep. But I remember him distinctly talking about the fact that he wore the same T-shirt every single day, and he referenced Mark Zuckerberg wearing the same T-shirt every day. And he introduced me to this idea of decision-making fatigue, and that successful people, whether it be a suit or whether it be a T-shirt, all of these redundant decisions that don't actually lead to a transformational outcome, you automate those so you don't waste decision-making energy every day. So it's just like, I have 25 black T-shirts so that I never have to waste energy on, picking what T-shirt to wear today type thing. And it reminded me of that when you were talking about, losing the energy by the end of the day, because there's so many redundant processes we now have to make decisions about, like responding to 25 different friends over the course of an 8-hour workday, whereas like 30 years ago, that was not even heard of.
I know. And it's also the number of tools we have too. Now, I'm not sure if you're like me, Matty, but, I get messages in Slack and WhatsApp and Messenger, and then someone says, I sent it to you, and then I spend a whole lot of time trying to trawl through and find that message as well. And, this is how the whole idea for HitPauze came about, was the fact that my wife was laughing at me. We came home from dinner on a Saturday night, and I was there messaging people. And as you mentioned, I'm involved with Screen Coach, and there I was sending Slack messages on a Saturday night to people and responding to a few other messages that came through, and said, look at you, this is a guy who used to, harp on about how we need to manage this better. And I was like, what is it? What is it that keeps us so compelled to have this within an arm's length? And I just did this little sort of self-exploration and asked people as well, little mini focus groups and conversations over coffee, just peeling back the layers. What is it that makes us want to have this thing near us? And I think there's a couple of things. I'm not sure if this is what I'm betting on really, is it's a little bit of FOMO, that fear of missing out, but also my new acronym, FOLOPIDed. It's going to take off. The fear of letting other people down. And that's one of the reasons why I feel that so many of me guilty as charged, have it so close by, because we have this unwritten social contract that says I'll get back to you within within a when it's at my earliest convenience. So it's actually the obligation from the message sender is on me, the person who's received that message, to get back straight away. And I know what it's like, because I have that expectation on others too. Because sometimes if I send a message to someone and they don't get back to me, I'll use another channel. I'll send them an SMS, or if they do that, then I'll send them a Slack, and I'll sort of end up, accosting them until I actually get a response. Anyhow, that's where I feel that there's something we need to look at.
No, I think that acronym obviously hilarious. But it's almost like we need to rewrite the social contract, the expectation of one another. And I actually, so I don't have any social media apps on my phone, because I don't want to. And it took me, like everybody that's listening, thinking like, oh, Matty's just got it all figured out. It took me years to get there, yep. Right? But I've got one chat app, and on that chat app, which is just kind of friends, I have notifications turned off for them and me purposely, so I don't violate the social contract. Because if they've seen that I've seen it and I don't get back to them, then the presumption is that I'm ignoring them. And I might not be ignoring them, just like every other human. I'm doing stuff, or I actually want space from my, hectic life like we all have. And so, maybe that might be a little way to get around the social contract. But you're right, it exists. The only reason that I feel comfortable with it is because they don't know that I've seen it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I know the one that lets you know that you've looked at the message. It frightens me sometimes.
Yeah.
I've opened it up. Oh, no, I've got to respond. Just recently we participated in the Global Day of Unplugging. So there's a range of organisations and groups around Australia, but around the world as well. And so I'm up here on the sunny coast, and we've got a whole lot of teams and companies involved on that Friday afternoon, turning off their phones and their devices. And one of the biggest feedback we got from people that I heard anecdotally from people was, man, it was really hard not to want to go over and turn it on. It was really hard not to just go over there and just check what's going on. And that's it. I think we've got this way of behaviour that we've all socially accepted as the norm.
Yeah.
We need to, and that sort of pendulum's gone a certain way. And look, I don't believe that HitPauze is the silver bullet, and other products you mentioned. You use things like Freedom as well. There's no silver bullet. It's just this ability to start to bring this pendulum back the other way, and that's what we really want to hope we can be part of that next narrative. And you start to see some of the even at an organisational level, there's some changes that are happening. Just recently, the Peak Teachers Union here in Australia and the Police Union have engaged with this project called the right to disconnect. So it's in their agreements that you have the right to disconnect. You can imagine teachers at 9:00 at night getting messages from parents saying, "Hey, little Johnny, is it a yellow T-shirt or red T-shirt tomorrow? Or, why did he get a C on his history project? I worked really hard on it. So it's giving the teachers this right to disconnect because these boundaries are blurring.
It's funny you say that. I recently was in a doctor's appointment, and I noticed that the doctor, or maybe it was the nurse, was using her own phone to put in patient data. And before I left the hospital, that was starting to come in as well. And so I think as well, it's funny because I remember, if I go back to when I was a teenager or early 20s, if the boss rounded the corner and you had a phone in your hand, it's like you could have been fired. Whereas now, literally any job, nobody bats an eyelid if you're distracted on your phone talking to your friends about drinks on Friday night. Like, it's so deeply ingrained. But what I think part of the problem with the disconnecting from work is that now with work, social, kids, everything is in the one device. And whilst that's a great selling point in marketing, it's like one device to solve every problem that you've ever got. It actually creates more because you never exit the tab for that conversation with that person, or that conversation about that thing with the kids, the mum's group and the kids, and then the school, and then work, and then in the middle of the night you get a WhatsApp message to your work group, and you're now thinking about work, and it's like we're just incredibly and forever connected to every conversation that's ever happening.
All right. And this is probably the first bit of feedback that I love the most about HitPauze, because what happens is if you write a message, hey, I'm talking to Matty on a killer podcast, I'll get back to you at 5:00 this afternoon. You press that message. Anyone who hits you up with a question is going to get that message back. I hope we finish before 5, but I've now given myself up until 5:00, and there's two winners in that. The person who's now sent that message and put their phone down, they've got the ability just to relax and go, oh, thank gosh, I don't have to keep checking it. But the feedback we get the most from is the person who receives the message. They like it. They just like being told, oh, well, he's busy. Hope they have a good chat. And then they move on with their day because, and, we could go really deep on this, but, we all think that, everyone's thinking about us. We're not. We're all thinking about, ourselves and not others. So as soon as that person gets that message saying, hey, I'm off till 5:00, here's my boundary, that works for people. There's a great friend of ours, Harps, who we talked about before on the course of Craig Harper. If you haven't seen him or checked him out, I'm sure you've referenced him a few times, Matty.
Yeah, he's been here before too.
Oh, he's been here. Yeah, good. I'm in good company. He had a post recently where he had this old Nokia 2110 phone, and he said, I don't actually turn on my phone till midday. And I bounced a message to him as well, a bit of a ride on and solidarity. But, he set a boundary. And so people now know, hey, Harp's not going to get back to you till the afternoon. And how easy is his life now? He doesn't need to pick up that device. He doesn't need to get engaged. He can really focus on what's important to him right there till that time. And I just think that was really the precursor for me to start moving down this track.
Yeah. Well, how do you think people? A better question would be, why do you think people have anxiety once they use apps that create space? Like, what do you think's going on in there where they're like, oh, I feel, because you mentioned on that unplugging day, like people like, oh, it was really hard to not go and pick up the phone or do the thing. Like, what do you think's going on with that anxiety in that space? Well,
there's a habit. I think the base thing is there is that habit, and there is that, what we've talked about a little bit there already, that social acceptance that I will get back to at my earliest convenience. So that there's that piece. And so learning a new habit is a lot of the work that you do, Matty. It's that creating a new habit, the 21-day sort of cycle of building a mental muscle and a new pathway of, it's okay for me to put the phone down. It's okay for me to do that, and I know when I've had weekends where I put my phone down, there's this little seed of anxiety that starts off that I start with, and then eventually I become comfortable with it, and it's okay. And I eventually get through the weekend, and guess what? The whole world gets on okay without Gary not getting back to them for 2 days. That's amazing, and that same blessing is available to all of us.
Yeah. Well, I think as well, we've conditioned ourselves over the last 20, 25 years to just have it like incrementally increasing mental burden of information that's coming into our brains. And we're just at a point of overwhelm, but we're stuck with like the hamster on the wheel. It's like, we don't know how we got here. So the idea of getting anywhere else seems impossible. And I think with that anxiety at such high levels, as soon as people start to create a space where they feel their anxiety, it's like, well, the phone is so accessible. Why would I suffer the anxiety when I can just pick it up?
right? What a great dopamine hit. It's there in a second. And, I know I shared just before, but, I have my own little sets of boundaries for myself, but I'm not always great at following through on them. And the next thing you know, I'm finding myself looking at a reel after reel after reel and going, oh, you got caught again, because they're good, right? Like, the social dilemma really highlighted it. They build these things to be sticky. They build these things to be attractive. There's so much talk right now about TikTok in particular, and how to sort of maybe even remove that from parts of America. Now, that's from a data control point of view, but I think it's also I think there's a few from the mental health point of view saying, this could be a really great foot off the accelerator for so many people.
Yeah, well, I have a couple of close friends that have young kids, and it's like catastrophic level arguments in their house over TikTok. Like, it's so hyper addictive at an age where these kids have no idea of self-regulation, and nor should they. They're like 5 or 7 or 8 or 10, and so it's kind of like, giving sugar, which we also do to these kids at such a young age, and it's no wonder they end up being predictably diabetic, overweight, cancer sufferers in 30 years. But it's the same with their mind, where we're rotting their mind from a very young age by giving them access to a hyper-producing dopamine source that gives them pleasure that they become addicted to. They get no experience with dealing with anxiety because, again, you can nurture it with whatever's in the pantry or whatever mum or dad's phone, or these days your own phone at 7 years old.
Yeah.
And so by the time you become an adult, you have absolutely no resilience skills to navigate discomfort because you've nurtured it with serotonin, dopamine hits from the day that you were born.
Yeah. It's going to keep you employed for a long time, Matty. But I totally, all jokes aside, I totally agree. And it really scares me. It really, truly scares me what that looks like and what this next generation, what the impact could be on this next generation coming through. There's the increasing level of adoption of smartphones between 2017 and 2021 was on a certain curve, and at my maths and my angles aren't that good on screen, but the increase in depression, suicidal thoughts, and mental health stress and burnout is not only equal to but accelerating at a higher level. Now, we can't just say that's the smartphone and only. Society and life is getting busier. In that time as well, we had COVID shutdowns and a whole raft of other things. So I'm not trying to use that stat as the only piece, but there is a strong relationship. If you start to see some of the data coming through, there's a really strong relationship to high screen usage and the impact on ourselves. And you're right, kids don't have the ability to self-manage. And I shared my own failings where, I sometimes find myself not being able to manage and have to pull myself apart and go, Gary, what are you doing? That to me is one of it. And it's just our habits as well. There's some of the statistics. 80% of people check their phone within the first 30 minutes. 81% of people check their phones. And that's because 37% of people actually have their phone in bed with them at night. And there was this 26 people, 64% of people check their phone on the toilet. It's just become this cultural groundswell. It's taken over our lives. And I just feel that that's a part of, we've all got to be a part of a bigger conversation as a society to say, hey, it's okay to stop. It's okay to say no. It's okay to set boundaries. And that's where we come in.
Yeah. Well, and maybe let's get into that a little more. So HitPauze, it's obviously, allows you to create space, but like, how does somebody begin to start using this? Like, what's your advice for someone that's thinking about downloading HitPauze or an app like that to create space? Like, what is someone that is in a situation that's like needs this product?
I think the common answer from people who say, I need this product, is someone has multiple messaging services. So right now we integrate with WhatsApp, Messenger, Slack, Signal, Telegram. We have Instagram and LinkedIn coming in fairly soon too. And they're the big players. If you start looking at the data for app usage around the world, they're really some of the big ones that people are using. And essentially you just create a link between the services that you use the most or that you want to put HitPauze on. And then you write a message. We've kept it really simple and really clean. You just write a simple message. We often recommend people to tell people when they're going to be back online, and then press HitPauze. It's a big dumb pause button like you have on your remote control, and that's it. You've done it. And now when anyone sends a message in, they will get that reply back. And this is we're a startup, so this is our first version of the product, and we've already got a roadmap which includes looking at SMS and maybe not email, because email is not an instantaneous message service these days, but really is for the instant message services. We'll start to build it out, and we'd love people to jump on board and give it a go and start giving us feedback to how where we can shape it. You know, there's a big movement that's happening out there right now around people and screen time, and we want to be out in front of that narrative and be part of it. You know, that's our passion.
Yeah, well, I feel like I'm a part of that movement since I've got none of the apps on my phone, and I don't actually have it on my desk because I want to be present with you, right? I don't want to feel the pull. And you know, you being real about your own failings sometimes. I'm a human too. I have the same thing. I try not to turn it on first thing in the morning, but sometimes that ends up happening. Sometimes I get pulled away. But I've gone as far as there's this, maybe you've seen it, there's a bit of an entrepreneur movement where entrepreneurs are trying to make their phone no longer the main thing, but the accessory that it's meant to be. And so I've even got black backgrounds, no apps on my home screen, not even the call button. Like the front page of my phone is completely zero stimulation. There's the clock. That's it. Not even a picture, not even a background.
Oh, yeah. Look, we're going to support that. Absolutely. Love to get involved with that too. We can share some of those deets as well in your show notes.
Yeah,
because I'm sure a lot of people out there we need to be part of a gretter conversation. So the Global Day of Unplugging is one part of it, but there's
what day
other
is that, by the way? What's the day?
That's the 4th of March. So it's just happened recently.
Yep.
But every year they do that, and there's a whole group of people who are really out in front. But they're getting some powerful support from influencers and those in Parliament as well. You know, I mentioned earlier about the right to disconnect, but that's been accepted by a couple of groups here in Australia. But there's whole countries now, Ireland, Belgium, France, the UK is considering it right now. In fact, Adam Brandt, the Green member down in Melbourne, he's actually put forward the right to disconnect as a senator. He's putting that forward here in Australia as well. So there is this change at an organisational level, but change from an organisational level only really occurs when there's a groundswell of people to support, because politicians do it for votes. I didn't want to give that away, but I mean, Adam and their group in the Greens have a very strong agenda too. I'm not hiding that, but they're really reacting to the fact that there is this groundswell, and it's a hidden groundswell as well for mine too, if I can say it. You know, with I remember back in the days when we were launching Screen Coach and doing focus groups with Screen Coach, we get a whole lot of parents in the room. We start saying, hey, parents, tell us about your experiences with kids and screen time. And there'd be this little bit of banter going on, and there's a bit of laughing and giggling. And then at some point we'd rip the scab off. At some point someone would share us a war story about themselves and their kids and screens. And then we just start to get these more and more stories. I remember we had a lady who had to go to bed with her and put her Xbox and the modem underneath her mattress, but not under the bed. If you put it under the bed, the kids would get it. Under the mattress was safer. And we had an architect who he told us he would take the PlayStation to work and put it on his desk next to him, and because he knew if it was at home, there's a high chance his kids would race off. And I mean, these are extreme a bit of outlier stories in some way, but it's also when the same with our groups when we're talking to people with their addiction to their devices. And we start talking to parents and to adults and start talking about themselves on phones. They start to go, yeah, I'm a little bit addicted. Oh, it's a bit of fun. And then they go, oh no, I actually looked at my screen time, like my Apple screen time stats.
Yeah. That's
frightening. Oh my God, I spent 6 hours on that bloody thing yesterday. I spent, in those amount of hours, what are we getting? What else could we do with that time?
Yeah,
and I don't think it's cutting it off at the knees too. I don't think we need to stop it altogether. It's a great tool for entertainment, education, and sometimes as a parent for me, the electronic babysitter. It has a range of functions, but it's just that balance.
Yeah. Well, and I think as well, acknowledging that, as you sort of said earlier, these companies spend a lot of money making these products sticky, which is the business word for addictive, basically.
Yeah.
And so, we are acknowledging that we are fighting against some really deep science and engineering. And so we obviously have to be really strategic about the way we go about it, because you have to surrender to the fact you're a human. Just because I'm a nutritionist doesn't mean I'm always perfect with my eating habits, because guess what? Sugar is hyper addictive, and I'm a human, right? And it's the same with phone usage. So I think that's why for me, learning about yourself and the way that you operate allows you to set up systems that then can be successful, rather than just being like, try not to do it. It's like, have you ever told a heroin addict to try not to do it? It's not a good strategy. And so like once you understand yourself a little better, I knew, can I regulate my relationship with the Facebook or WhatsApp? No, it has to not be on the phone, the end. Like, you know what I mean? So and that's the way that I have to do it. And the same with the way that I've used some of the other apps before HitPauze was around was that, I would just be like, catch myself bouncing around YouTube and getting stuck in the wormhole. And I'd be like, right, press the button, do it. Now you can't access anything. Too bad. You've got to work.
Yeah, I love it.
Everything's blocked.
Well, I love it. I really that's the part for some parts of our audience. That's really the way we need to do it, you know. And that's what has to happen. And I think that's where we're finding that balance is so bespoke for people too. You know, everyone's got to find their best, but gee, I tell you, one way is to have that global day of unplugging for yourself. You know, you don't have to wait till the 4th of March. You know, you can take it on any time you want and just give yourself that moment. And I really love what you said there, Matty, as well about identifying it. It's really when you catch yourself and going, oh, wow, I really feel compelled to want to actually open up that app.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And even, I don't know if you've been through this experience as well, but I've certainly myself and I've heard others say the same, where they kind of open something up like not knowing they don't want to open it up, but their mind is saying, I don't want to open it up. And they're just like, yeah, but I want to find out, you know, what's going on. And so it's actually experiencing that at a physical and level and a mental level as well. That really is one of those precursors to making that change.
I was watching a video yesterday and I forget who it was by, some spiritual guru, but it was the idea that, you know, being on social media altogether gives us this hyper-inflated sense of self-importance and like we're way more special than we are to the world. And that actually when you start to pull away from it, that some of that anxiety and fear comes around the idea that you're no longer special and unique and nobody wants to see your life and witness you. And I actually went through that myself as well. And sure, I've got quite a successful podcast and I'm out there in the world, but being deplatformed from Instagram was one of the best things I think that ever happened to my mental health. Like just not feeling the need to present anything. And what it did is it forced me to reinforce my human relationships and get really clear on who are my circle of people that I really care about the approval and value and input of. And outside of that circle of maybe 10 people, truth is I really don't care.
Yeah.
But you get on social media, you have almost the illusion that you care about all these people that don't really matter.
Look, it's certainly part of the conversation we're having internally at HitPauze is okay, so now people are starting to better manage and they're putting this tool in place. You know, how do we support them through that? Because you know, you're not the Lone Ranger. You know, people turning off these devices are finding it really hard. And I really love what you said about that. I suppose that anxiety, because the first thing we do, it's the first thing we do when that pang of anxiety or panic attacks, we go to something that nestles us and secures us so beautifully, which is a phone or a chocolate bar or something else in the fridge. And so I believe that's something that we want to be part of that conversation. We're probably not we're the tool to start with, but we want to partner with those who really are involved in that conversation. It's why it's been great, talking to you here on this podcast, because, I just love your message. Same with our kindred spirit in harps as well, that message about looking after and caring for ourselves and having a great life, right? Like, isn't that what it's about? Like, there's good stuff to do on a screen, but there's so much good stuff to do outdoors as well.
I got a bit of a businessy question.
Yep.
Like with things like HitPauze and obviously the behemoths, we're trying to take space from these multi-billion-dollar companies that want you to not take space. Like, do they make it challenging for you? And I'm talking Facebooks and TikToks and stuff like that. Do they make it challenging you to plug into their services? Because you're an anti-Facebook product, right? From a business perspective, it's like, hang on, our goal as Facebook is to get as many eyes for as many minutes as possible. So is that a challenging kind of thing to set up?
It's been an interesting conversation for those big organisations to wrestle with. So about 4 or 5 years ago, Apple they blocked third-party support services for I can't remember what function inside the Apple phone. Essentially, it stopped any sort of app provider who limited access to devices and apps, restricted their ability to do that. Yep. Service, and they were taken. And the Apple was taken to The Hague by a range of organisations, including the people who I own and run Sesame Street, children's television network. They were using a whole range of services, and Apple shut it down with a whole view to trying to stop these sorts of onset of screen time management limitation services. And they got a big rap on the knuckles. Now, since then, they've allowed, what's it called? I can't remember. It'll come to me at the end. That they've allowed that service now to be available, and organisations like Screen Coach have been able to take advantage of that service inside Apple devices. But their conversation has slightly changed. Back then, when 4 or 5 years ago was no, we're going to stop anyone who tries to restrict them using an Apple device. Facebook as well had some very strong policies inside their terms and conditions. They've softened that a little bit, and it's really again flowing in with that sort of narrative that's happening in society where people are saying we've got to step away, and rather than be the one being the dealer constantly forcing it at you, they're stepping back and saying you have to make the choice, and they're starting to allow that to happen a bit more. I think the companies on their brochure they're saying we're supporting people having better health and balance. I'm sure there's certain parts of marketing departments that just really want to get you in.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things with a business that goes from just an idea in somebody's brain to being so large that any person from the outside would expect that a company that large should have a social responsibility to the mental health of literally the world, because depending on the angle that you look at information from, like Facebook is responsible for some really devastating stuff worldwide, and so it's like, at what point do you go from being a private business owner whose business just got out of control and went really well to being like, you are socially responsible for the way that culture and the planet moves forward. And currently, we're creating addicted children and people to this digital world that we're creating. And what is the cost of that? Possibly multiple generations. So it's like, at what point are they held accountable? And it makes me think of the Coca-Cola. Like through uni and stuff, I had to do all sorts of assignments on Coca-Cola because they're this sugar company that has addicted the world, but they do this socially responsible stuff of giving money to science research and building gyms. And it's like, sure, it doesn't negate what you've done though. It doesn't change that you're still making the same amount of money from Coca-Cola. So it's like, it's such a political responsibility kind of nightmare. But I'm so glad that there's, the sort of the opposite in yourself of being like, what, we have to make these companies accountable. And if the way we have to do that is by creating alternative technology, then that's what we're going to do.
And, I mentioned it briefly, but, with COVID, the onset of COVID, a lot of people are working from home, and hybrid working is now the norm. And it's been proven to be very productive in some organisations and some sectors as well. But it's also blurring those lines between on and off time. And that's where companies are now starting to figure out, well, hey, hybrid working is working really well for us. Where our team are really effective. They're answering emails at 11 o'clock at night. And then there is that little bit of burnout right now. And so the code of practice was engaged with middle of last year here in Australia, to do with psychosocial responsibility. And it's really about managing our team members. And a code of practice is not a legally binding document, but it's a guide forward for large organisations to say you have a social responsibility. And just leaning in on those words you had before, Matty. You have a social responsibility to your team members and workmates to better manage themselves around these sorts of conditions. And from that now is becoming a whole new way of managing people in that way. And funnily enough, organisations, they're commercial, right? They're doing it for a profit. They're actually finding a real ROI, return on investment. Sorry, I'm using a lot of acronyms today. But there's a real return on investment right now for organisations when they when they actually start to engage with people and try and prevent that burnout. Because it's, look, we've got these new terms that have come through, quiet quitting and all these other pieces, the way people are starting but that's just a reflection of burnout, right? You're just starting to say, I just need to step away. I'll smile and answer your emails. I'll raise the flag and say, yeah, I'm here. But gosh, I just need some time alone. And that's okay. But sometimes that just becomes you actually just, stopping your life as well, you just become, and so that's where I think it's really important. I think organisations are realising if they get they strike that balance right. You've got a person who's engaged, and I love working. I don't know if I'm a bit different like that, but when I do, I like doing my stuff, and I think a lot of people do too. So they're getting pushed to the point where you don't want to engage anymore. It's not healthy.
I totally agree.
Pushing yourself to the point where you can't go any further is not healthy. But there's this beautiful middle sweet spot where life and work is fun, right? Like you get to do different things, and some days some parts of our jobs suck and some bits are good, but overall it's pretty good.
I totally agree, and I think that the place that we experience that goodness that you talk about is in being present. And the problem with all of this technology is that it pulls us away from the present moment. And even in the times that are shitty, it's easier to get through shit when you're present and able to deal with it and rationally make decisions rather than think, I've got 25 other things to do right now. And it's not just in my mind. All the notifications are in front of me with 7 of this and 3 of that and 4 of this, and mum's called me 25 times and all of the things. And I think, practicing, because I don't think it's peace of mind. I think it's peace from mind, which is,
I like that.
Arguably the idea of meditation. It's not the illusion that you can make your thoughts go away. It's just being able to take space from them and say, hey, it's okay that you're all here, but we're not going to give you any significance or meaning beyond what we need to. So I think that developing that muscle it's going to take a long time, but that's the idea of, creating space for yourself.
Yeah, beautifully. I'm taking that with me. Peace from mind.
Yeah.
Look, I can't say it enough. I mean, I love my own practices, and we all probably have our own forms of practices to keep us sane sometimes, or keep us insane. I don't know, but and that's again something it's a responsibility on ourselves, and it's a muscle we need to build and develop over time. So just like we talked about, managing screens and different apps slightly differently and changing that muscle, it's building that muscle to how to look after ourselves at those times. But that's your sweet spot. That's your wheelhouse.
Speaking of wheelhouses, how can people end up in yours? Like, where do they download the app? Where do they find everything about Gary? Where do we point them?
Yeah, obviously. So we're in the App Store, the Google Play Store and App Store. So look for HitPauze. HitPauze, I'm looking for the logo around me. I don't have it here with me. I'm not at my desk. HitPauze with a Z instead of an S. So HitPauze with a Z. Google that. We also have the website, of course, hitpauze.com. And you want to find out about me, just a good old LinkedIn. My name, Gary Borham. I'm sure you'll probably throw that in the show notes and reach out and say hello if you've got some thoughts or interests or some ideas you'd love to share, because our team here are really passionate about making a difference. And you talk about large organisations. I tell you, my heart starts to blossom when I think about that, because we'd love to see not only HitPauze be large for ourselves, but really for so many people in the community and so many people globally, just being able to say, hey, we're taking control of our time. Anyhow.
Fantastic. I love all of it. And just as you said, like, all of those links will be down in the show notes below. So if you've enjoyed this episode or you want to get in touch with Gary or check out HitPauze, scroll down to the show notes below, click the links. We'll hook you up with everything. And if you feel like you've got a friend or family member that can benefit from hearing about this, or you want to share these ideas with your partner, figuring out how you might bring them into the home, create more space, presence, that type of thing, get down to the show notes, share this episode with them, have a conversation about it, because I think this is going to benefit everybody in lots of little ways that they didn't expect in their own private life. So really appreciate you being here, Gary. And so to wrap up, of all the things in the world it could possibly be, what is one piece of health information that you wish more people knew about?
Oh, I'm sure many people know about it, but do yoga. God, I've fallen in love with yoga again. I've been doing it for a long time, but I just got this new instructor locally, and it's a men's one. It's not unicorns and rainbows, and I've been to many of those classes as well. But these guys, it's just, gosh, great breath work, good stretching and breath. Oh, nothing better. There you are. That's mine.
Oh, I love that. Well, that's totally in context with the conversation, because if there's one tool that's really helpful to get you to be present and, in the current moment and experiencing the now, the yoga is definitely great for that.
Yeah, love it. Love it.
Amazing. Thanks, Gary. We'll catch you soon.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Matty. Thanks, everyone.
See you, mate.